The confetti hadn't even fallen yet, but the entire America's Got Talent theater was already in tears. And as the clock ticked closer to midnight, a small barefoot boy stood alone under the brightest lights in the world, holding a microphone too big for his trembling hands. What happened next would make even Simon Cowell fight back tears. But before we begin, if you believe in miracles, in second chances, and in dreams that rise from nothing, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard by the whole world. His name was Matteo Reyes. He was 12 years old, from a small fishing village in Cebu, Philippines. The kind of place where houses were built from tin sheets and hope was the only thing that never ran out. Matteo's father had been a fisherman, lost at sea during a violent typhoon 2 years earlier. His mother washed clothes for neighbors from sunrise to sunset, her hands cracked from soap and salt water. They didn't have much, sometimes not even enough rice for dinner, but every New Year's Eve, no matter how hard the year had been, Matteo's father used to gather the family outside their small home and sing Happy New Year at the top of his lungs. "It doesn't matter what we don't have," his father would say. "As long as we sing, we welcome blessings." After his father's death, the song became too painful to sing. The house felt quieter. The nights felt longer. Matteo stopped smiling the way he used to. But one evening, while helping his mother hang wet clothes under a fading orange sky, he softly began humming the melody again. His mother froze. She didn't speak. She simply listened, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You sound just like him," she whispered. From that moment, something inside Matteo changed. He began singing more often, on the docks while fishermen repaired nets, at small barangay events, even on street corners to help earn a few extra pesos. His voice wasn't just beautiful, it carried something deeper. Pain. Hope. Memory. People would stop what they were doing just to listen. One day, a tourist recorded him singing and posted it online. The video showed a thin boy in worn-out slippers, eyes closed, singing Happy New Year with a voice far bigger than his fragile frame. Within weeks, the video had millions of views. Comments poured in from around the world. "This boy needs to be on AGT. His voice healed me. I felt that." Months later, a letter arrived. America's Got Talent wanted him to audition. The journey to America felt unreal. Matteo had never even been on an airplane before. His mother clutched his hand tightly during takeoff, whispering prayers. When they arrived in Los Angeles, the bright lights and towering buildings overwhelmed him. He felt small again. Smaller than ever. Backstage at AGT, surrounded by performers with glittering costumes and confident smiles, Matteo looked down at his simple white polo shirt and neatly pressed black pants borrowed from a church donation box. His shoes were slightly too big. His hands were shaking. "What's your name, young man?" Terry Cruz asked warmly as Matteo walked onto the stage. "I'm Matteo Reyes, sir," he replied, his accent thick but his voice steady. "And where are you from?" "From Cebu, Philippines." The audience cheered. Simon leaned forward. "And what will you be singing for us tonight?" Matteo swallowed. "Happy New Year, sir." Simon raised an eyebrow slightly. "That's an interesting choice." Matteo nodded. "It was my father's favorite song." The theater grew quiet. The music began softly. Just a simple piano melody. Matteo closed his eyes. The first note left his lips like a whisper, but it carried across the entire auditorium. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was pure. As he sang about welcoming a new year, about leaving behind pain and embracing hope, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from emotion. Halfway through the song, a giant screen behind him displayed images sent from his village, children waving, fishermen smiling, his mother watching from backstage with clasped hands. Matteo opened his eyes briefly and saw the images. Tears streamed down his face, but he didn't stop. The final chorus swelled, his voice rising stronger, fuller, filled with every ounce of love he had for his father. The last note hung in the air long after the music stopped. Silence. And then, the entire audience rose to their feet. Heidi Klum was wiping her eyes. Sofia Vergara pressed her hand to her heart. Howie Mandel shook his head in disbelief. And Simon Cowell, the man known for his tough critiques and stone-cold reactions, was blinking rapidly. He leaned back in his chair, pressing his lips together as if trying to hold something in. That, Simon finally said, his voice quieter than usual, was not just singing. That was storytelling. That was love. And I don't say this often, but that moved me. Matteo stood frozen, tears still falling. Simon cleared his throat. You reminded us what this show is really about. Not perfection. Not fame. But heart. The audience erupted again. Then, without warning, Simon reached forward and slammed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, raining down like 1,000 tiny stars. Matteo covered his face in shock. His mother ran onto the stage, embracing him tightly as they both cried under the shower of gold. This is for Papa, Matteo whispered. News of his performance spread across the globe. In his village, neighbors gathered around a small television powered by a borrowed generator, cheering as they watched their boy shine on the world's biggest stage. Donations poured in to rebuild homes damaged by storms. Schools invited Matteo to speak. He became a symbol not just of talent but of resilience. Months later, on New Year's Eve, Matteo returned to Cebu. This time, he stood on a newly built community stage overlooking the sea that had taken his father. The entire village gathered. Fireworks waited in the distance. As the clock neared midnight, Matteo lifted the microphone once more. This song, he said softly, is for anyone who lost something, but still chooses to hope. He began to sing. But this time, he wasn't alone. The entire village joined him. Voices rising together. Stronger. Braver. Ready for a new beginning. Because sometimes, the poorest child carries the richest gift. Sometimes, the smallest voice echoes the loudest across the world. And sometimes, a simple New Year's song can heal hearts that didn't even know they were broken. If this story touched you, if you believe that dreams can rise from storms and that hope can sing louder than pain, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement. And subscribe to the channel for more inspiring journeys just like Matteo's. As long as we sing, we welcome blessings. The countdown clock flashed on the giant screen behind the judges, 10, 9, 8, and in the center of the America's Got Talent stage stood a thin 12-year-old boy in worn-out shoes. Gripping a microphone with both hands as if it were the only solid thing in his world. Before the new year even arrived, before the fireworks or the confetti, Simon Cowell was already fighting back tears. And what this poor Filipino boy did in the next few minutes would remind millions why hope is the most powerful song of all. If you believe in miracles born from struggle, take a second right now to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to echo into every new beginning. His name was Daniel Cruz, a small boy from Tacloban, Philippines, a place that knew storms too well. When Daniel was 7, a typhoon tore through his town like a monster made of wind and water. Their tiny wooden house collapsed. The sea swallowed everything, furniture, photographs, even his father's fishing boat. His father never came home after that night. For years, Daniel's mother carried both grief and responsibility on her thin shoulders. She sold rice cakes on the roadside, waking before sunrise every day. Daniel helped after school, shouting, "Fresh bibingka! Fresh puto," to passing jeepneys. At night, when the world finally quieted down, Daniel would sit outside their patched-up shelter and stare at the sky. His father used to love New Year's Eve. Even when they had no fireworks, no fancy food, no gifts, his father would clap his hands and sing Happy New Year loudly and proudly, off-key but full of joy. "We sing to welcome blessings," he would say. "We sing to tell the world we survived." After the typhoon, Daniel couldn't sing that song without breaking down. It felt like singing without the person who made it special. One New Year's Eve, when Daniel was 10, the village had almost nothing to celebrate. Many families were still rebuilding. The electricity kept flickering. As midnight approached, silence filled the air instead of laughter. Daniel looked at his mother, who was trying to smile but couldn't hide her sadness. Without thinking, Daniel stood up on a plastic chair outside their small home. And he began to sing. His voice was soft at first, shaking like a candle in the wind. Happy New Year! Happy New Year, but as he continued, something changed. The fear left. The grief turned into strength. His voice grew fuller, stronger, soaring over the damaged rooftops and broken streets. Neighbors opened their doors. Children stepped outside. One by one, people joined him. By the time the clock struck midnight, the entire street was singing together. Someone recorded that moment on an old phone and posted it online with the caption, "Poor boy leads typhoon survivors in New Year song." The video spread across social media like wildfire. Comments flooded in from around the world. People said his voice gave them chills. Others said they cried. One message stood out: "This boy needs to audition for America's Got Talent." Months later, an email arrived. Then a phone call. Then plane tickets. Daniel had never left the Philippines before. The first time he saw an airplane up close, he whispered, "It's bigger than our whole street." His mother squeezed his hand and said, "This is your father's blessing." When Daniel stepped onto the AGT stage, the lights felt blinding. The audience looked endless. The judges sat like powerful giants behind their desk. He felt small again, like the night of the storm. Terry Cruz smiled warmly. "What's your name, young man?" "Daniel Cruz, sir." "And where are you from?" "Tacloban, Philippines." The audience cheered loudly. Simon leaned forward. "Daniel, why did you choose to come all this way to audition?" Daniel hesitated, then spoke honestly. "Because my father used to say singing brings hope. I want to bring hope." A quiet fell over the theater. "And what will you sing?" Simon asked. "Happy New Year." A few people exchanged curious looks. It wasn't a typical competition song. No big vocal runs. No dramatic ballad. The music began, simple piano, gentle and steady. Daniel closed his eyes. The first line floated out like a prayer. Clear. Pure. Fragile but determined. His voice carried pain, but also resilience. When he reached the chorus, something extraordinary happened. The softness transformed into power. His voice filled every corner of the theater, echoing against the walls like a promise. Images of his village appeared on the big screen behind him, children rebuilding homes, fishermen fixing nets, his mother selling rice cakes with a tired but proud smile. Daniel's voice cracked slightly on the line, "May we all have a vision now and then," but he didn't stop. He sang through the tears. He sang for his father. He sang for his mother. He sang for every family still rebuilding. By the final chorus, the audience was already standing. Heidi was wiping tears openly. Sophia pressed her hands together as if praying. Howie shook his head in amazement. And Simon Cowell, known for his calm, critical composure, looked down for a moment, blinking hard. When Daniel finished the final note, there was a silence so deep it felt sacred. Then the theater exploded into applause. Simon took a breath before speaking. "Daniel, that wasn't just a song. That was a moment." His voice softened. "You turned something simple into something unforgettable. You reminded us what a new year truly means." Daniel stood frozen, overwhelmed. Simon continued, his eyes slightly glassy. "Sometimes we forget how lucky we are. And then someone like you walks onto this stage." Without another word, Simon reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. The explosion of gold confetti rained down like a storm made of light. Daniel gasped, covering his mouth. His mother ran onto the stage, embracing him tightly as they both cried under the shimmering shower. Back in Tacloban, the entire neighborhood gathered around a small television in a sari-sari store, cheering wildly as they watched their boy shine on the world stage. Daniel didn't just win a golden buzzer that night. He won something bigger: belief. Donations poured into his community. A new fishing boat was bought for his uncle. Homes were repaired. Children were sent back to school. On the next New Year's Eve, Daniel stood once again in his village, but this time on a proper stage built by supporters. Bright lights glowed. Laughter filled the air. There were real fireworks waiting to explode in the sky. As midnight approached, Daniel looked up at the stars. "This is for you, Papa," he whispered. And when he began to sing Happy New Year, the entire town joined him again, but this time not from sorrow. From hope. Because being poor does not mean being powerless. Losing everything does not mean losing your voice. And sometimes, the simplest song, sung with the purest heart, can reach further than we ever imagine. If this story touched you even a little, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys of courage and hope. As long as we sing, we survive. And as long as we hope, every new year can truly be a new beginning. The judges were ready to wrap up the night. The audience was restless. It was almost New Year's Eve, and confetti cannons were already loaded above the stage. Then a small voice from backstage asked, "Is it my turn?" No one knew that in just a few minutes, the entire theater would fall silent, and Simon Cowell, the man who rarely shows emotion, would struggle to hold back tears. But before we step into that unforgettable moment, if you believe that the smallest voices can carry the biggest miracles, tap like and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us why hope never expires. His name was Joshua Via Noea. He was 11 years old, from a crowded neighborhood in Manila where the streets were narrow, the houses leaned against each other for support, and dreams often felt too expensive to keep. Joshua's father drove a pedicab from dawn until midnight. His mother cleaned offices in the city. Together, they barely earned enough to cover rent and rice. But every December 31st, no matter how tired they were, Joshua's family gathered on their tiny rooftop made of rusted tin sheets. They didn't have fireworks. They didn't have fancy food. But his father would clap his hands and say, "Joshua, sing it. Sing our New Year song." And Joshua would sing Happy New Year into the open night sky while neighbors cheered from their own rooftops. Then one year, everything changed. Joshua's father fell seriously ill. The hospital bills piled up. The pedicab was sold. The rooftop celebrations stopped. That New Year's Eve, there was no singing, only silence and the hum of machines in a hospital room. Before he passed away, his father squeezed Joshua's hand and whispered, "Don't stop singing. Promise me. Even when I'm not there, you sing louder." Joshua promised. After his father's death, life became heavier. Joshua helped his mother by selling sampaguita flowers at traffic lights. Between red and green signals, he would hum songs to himself. Some drivers ignored him. Some rolled up their windows. But once in a while, someone would lower the glass and say, "You have a beautiful voice, Eo." One rainy afternoon, while standing barefoot at a stoplight, Joshua began singing Happy New Year. It wasn't December. It wasn't even close. But he sang it anyway. A woman in a nearby car recorded him and posted the video online with the caption, "Flower Boy with a Golden Voice." Within days, the video spread everywhere. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. People were touched not just by his voice, but by the way he sang. Eyes closed. Face lifted. As if he was singing directly to heaven. Then came an invitation that felt impossible. America's Got Talent wanted him to audition for a special New Year episode. Joshua had never left Manila. Stepping into the AGT theater felt like entering another universe. Bright lights. Massive screens. Crowds of people speaking English so quickly he could barely understand. Backstage, other contestants wore sparkling outfits and rehearsed powerful high notes. Joshua stood quietly in a simple cream-colored barong Tagalog that someone had donated. His shoes were polished but slightly worn. He clutched a small folded photo of his father in his pocket. When his name was called, his legs felt weak. Terry Cruz greeted him with a huge smile. "What's your name, young man?" Joshua Via Noea, sir. And where are you from? Manila, Philippines. The audience cheered loudly. Simon leaned forward. Joshua, why did you choose to audition? Joshua hesitated, then said softly, because my father wanted me to sing louder. A hush fell over the room. And what will you be singing tonight? Simon asked. Happy New Year. Simon raised his eyebrows slightly, curious. The piano began. Joshua closed his eyes. The first note was delicate, almost trembling. But it carried something deep, like a memory wrapped in melody. As he sang the opening lines, his voice grew steadier. Richer. Stronger. The lyrics about hope and new beginnings suddenly felt different, no longer just words, but a promise kept. The camera caught his mother backstage, hands clasped tightly, whispering prayers. When Joshua reached the chorus, his voice soared. Not in a flashy, overdone way, but with sincerity so pure it felt almost sacred. The entire audience leaned forward. Simon's expression changed. His usual analytical gaze softened. Halfway through the song, Joshua's voice cracked for just a second when he sang, "May we all have a vision now and then." He blinked quickly, fighting tears, but he didn't stop. He sang through the emotion. Sang through the pain. Sang through the memory of hospital rooms and empty rooftops. By the final note, the entire theater was standing. There was a silence that lasted just long enough to feel eternal. Then the applause exploded. Heidi wiped tears openly. Sophia pressed her hand against her heart. Howie shook his head, whispering, "Wow." Simon took a deep breath before speaking. His voice wasn't as firm as usual. "Joshua, that was one of the most honest performances we've ever had on this stage." Joshua stood frozen, barely breathing. Simon continued, "You didn't just sing a song about the new year. You reminded us what it means to hold on to hope even when everything feels lost." Simon paused, blinking rapidly. "I don't cry easily," he admitted quietly. "But you got me." The audience let out a collective ah. Then Simon did something unexpected. He stood up. And slowly, he pressed the golden buzzer. The explosion of gold confetti rained down around Joshua like a sky full of blessings. He gasped, covering his mouth in disbelief. His mother ran onto the stage, hugging him tightly as they both cried beneath the golden storm. Joshua whispered through tears, "I sang louder, Papa." Back in Manila, neighbors crowded around a small television inside a sari-sari store, cheering wildly. Traffic stopped as drivers stepped out of their vehicles just to watch the replay on someone's phone. Joshua's performance didn't just win applause. It sparked change. Donations helped pay off hospital debts. Local leaders rebuilt parts of his neighborhood. Music scholarships were offered. Children who once felt invisible began to believe they mattered. On the next New Year's Eve, Joshua returned home. This time, the rooftop was repaired. Small fireworks lined the edge. The entire neighborhood gathered below. As midnight approached, Joshua held a microphone again. He looked up at the sky. And he sang. But this time, his voice wasn't alone. The entire neighborhood joined him. Laughter replaced silence. Hope replaced grief. Because sometimes the poorest child carries the richest gift. Sometimes the smallest voice shakes the biggest stage. And sometimes, a simple New Year's song becomes a bridge between loss and healing. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable journeys. No matter how hard the year has been, keep singing. Because every new year begins with a voice brave enough to believe. The stage lights dimmed. The countdown clock behind the judges read 59 minutes and 30 seconds until midnight. It was the special New Year's episode of America's Got Talent, and the producers wanted something unforgettable to close the show. What they didn't expect was that a thin, nervous boy from a poor village in the Philippines would deliver a performance so powerful that Simon Cowell would remove his glasses, look down at the desk, and fight back tears in front of millions. Before we step into that moment, if you believe that hope can rise from the hardest places, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind us why we keep going. His name was Raphael Mendoza. He was 13 years old, from a small coastal barangay in Bohol. His home was made of plywood and scrap metal, standing bravely against salty winds. His mother sold dried fish in the market. His older sister had stopped going to school so Raphael could continue his education. They lived day to day. Some days were good. Some days were only survived. Every New Year's Eve, even when they couldn't afford fireworks or medianoche, Raphael's grandmother would light a single candle in the center of their tiny home. "Light brings blessing," she would say. Then she would ask Raphael to sing Happy New Year. His voice would echo softly against the thin walls, mixing with distant fireworks from wealthier neighborhoods. 2 years ago, his grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep on New Year's morning. Since then, the song felt heavier. It carried memory. It carried grief. But it also carried her words, "Light brings blessing." Raphael didn't dream of fame. He dreamed of fixing the roof before the next storm. He dreamed of buying his mother a proper stove so she wouldn't cough from smoke every night. He sang while helping her at the market. He sang while walking home barefoot. Singing wasn't ambition, it was survival. One evening, a local teacher heard him practicing in an empty classroom after school. The teacher secretly recorded him and uploaded the video with the caption, "A voice too big for this small room." Within weeks, the video reached international pages. Messages flooded in. Then came something no one expected, an invitation to audition for America's Got Talent's New Year special. The flight to America felt like stepping into another universe. Raphael stared out the airplane window as clouds rolled beneath him. "Lola," he whispered softly, thinking of his grandmother, "this is for you." Backstage at AGT, everything felt overwhelming. The lights. The cameras. The other contestants wearing glittering costumes. Raphael wore a simple cream polo, black slacks slightly too short at the ankles, and borrowed dress shoes. He kept touching the small wooden cross his grandmother once gave him. When his name was called, his heart pounded so loudly he thought the microphone might pick it up. Terry Cruz smiled warmly. "What's your name, young man?" "Raphael Mendoza, sir." "And where are you from?" "From Bohol, Philippines." The crowd cheered loudly. Simon leaned forward slightly. "Raphael, why did you choose to audition tonight?" Raphael swallowed. "Because my grandmother said light brings blessing. I want to bring light." The room grew quiet. "And what will you sing?" Simon asked. "Happy New Year." A few audience members looked curious. It wasn't a typical show-stopping competition song. The piano began softly. Raphael closed his eyes. The first note came out fragile but pure, like a candle just lit. His voice carried a trembling sincerity that immediately silenced the room. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't filled with dramatic vocal tricks. It was honest. As he moved into the second verse, something shifted. The vulnerability turned into quiet strength. His voice grew warmer, fuller. Each lyric about hope and new beginnings felt deeply personal. Behind him, the big screen showed images of his small village, the ocean at sunrise, children playing barefoot, his mother arranging dried fish at her stall, an old candle flickering in a dark room. When Raphael reached the chorus, his voice soared unexpectedly high and powerful, filling the entire theater. The audience leaned forward. The sound was rich, emotional, almost aching. Simon's expression changed. His usual analytical stare softened. He removed his glasses slowly and looked down for a moment. Raphael sang the line, "May we all have a vision now and then," and his voice cracked, not from lack of skill, but from emotion. A tear slid down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He kept singing. And somehow, that imperfection made it even more perfect. By the final chorus, the entire audience was already on their feet. Some were holding hands. Some were openly crying. The last note lingered in the air like a prayer. Silence. A deep, sacred silence. Then the theater erupted. Heidi was wiping tears. Sophia pressed both hands to her heart. Howie shook his head in disbelief. Simon took a long breath before speaking. His voice was quieter than usual. Raphael. I've heard thousands of singers on this stage. He paused. But what you just did wasn't about singing. It was about truth. Raphael stood frozen, tears still in his eyes. Simon continued, you reminded us that the new year isn't about fireworks or parties. It's about hope. And tonight, you gave us that. Simon blinked rapidly, clearly emotional. I'm not ashamed to say this, he added softly. You moved me. The audience let out a collective sigh. Then Simon reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded above Raphael like a sky full of stars. He gasped, covering his face as tears streamed down freely. His mother ran onto the stage, hugging him tightly under the falling gold. In his village back home, neighbors gathered around a small television inside a modest store. When the golden buzzer rang, cheers echoed down the narrow streets. Firecrackers popped early in celebration. Raphael didn't just win a ticket to the live shows. He ignited something bigger. Donations began pouring in for his community. The leaking roofs were repaired. The school received new supplies. His mother was given support to expand her small stall. Months later, on New Year's Eve, Raphael stood once again in his barangay. But this time, there was a proper stage. There were lights strung across houses. There was laughter filling the air. At exactly midnight, instead of distant fireworks from other neighborhoods, bright colors exploded above their own homes. Raphael held the microphone. This is for you, Lola, he whispered. And he sang Happy New Year once more. But this time, the entire village sang with him, not out of survival, but celebration. Because poverty does not silence a dream. Loss does not erase a gift. And sometimes, the smallest candle can light the darkest room. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring journeys. No matter how hard your year has been, keep your light burning. Because the next new year might just change everything. The audience was already counting down to midnight when a stagehand rushed to the judge's table and whispered something urgent. Simon looked confused. The producers nodded. One last act, Terry Crews announced with a grin. And trust me, you'll want to see this. No one expected that the final performer of the New Year's special would be a shy 12-year-old boy from the Philippines wearing shoes that were slightly torn at the edges. No one expected that before the confetti even fell, Simon Cowell would be staring down at his desk, blinking hard, trying not to cry. But that's exactly what happened. Before we relive this unforgettable moment, if you believe that even the quietest voice can shake the world, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the most powerful stories come from the smallest beginnings. The boy's name was Angelo Ramirez. He came from a remote mountain village in Mindanao, where electricity only worked a few hours a day and clean water had to be carried in buckets from a distant pump. Angelo's father worked as a construction laborer in the city, coming home only twice a year. His mother tended a small vegetable garden and sold whatever she could harvest at the roadside. Life was never easy. But every December 31st, no matter how little they had, Angelo's family gathered outside their small wooden house. His father would be home, tired but smiling, and he would lift Angelo into his arms and say, "Anak, sing our New Year song. Let the mountains hear you." Angelo would sing Happy New Year into the cold mountain air, his voice echoing across the hills. It became their tradition. Their symbol of hope. Then one year, his father didn't come home. A workplace accident took him away just weeks before Christmas. Angelo's world collapsed quietly. There were no dramatic scenes. Just an empty chair. A silent New Year's Eve. A song left unsung. For months, Angelo refused to sing. Every note reminded him of his father. His mother tried to stay strong, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. School became harder. Hunger became more frequent. The garden wasn't enough. One evening, while sitting alone on a hill overlooking his village, Angelo whispered the first line of Happy New Year. His voice cracked immediately. He stopped. Then he remembered his father's words, "Let the mountains hear you." So he tried again. And this time, he didn't stop. A local volunteer teacher heard him singing and stood frozen. She had never heard anything like it, raw, emotional, powerful, far beyond his years. Without telling him, she recorded a short clip and uploaded it with the caption, "A mountain boy singing for his father." The video spread faster than anyone imagined. Within weeks, it reached producers from America's Got Talent, who were preparing a global New Year's special featuring inspiring stories. They invited Angelo to audition. When Angelo first stepped into the AGT theater, he felt like he had entered another planet. The lights were blinding. The seats seemed endless. The stage was bigger than his entire village plaza. He wore a simple white button-down shirt donated by a church group and neatly pressed black trousers. His hands trembled as he walked to the center of the stage. Terry Cruz smiled warmly. "What's your name?" "Angelo Ramirez, sir." "And where are you from?" "Mindanao, Philippines." The crowd applauded loudly. Simon leaned forward. "Why did you decide to come here, Angelo?" Angelo swallowed hard. "Because my father wanted the mountains to hear me sing. Maybe now, the world can hear me too." A soft murmur filled the theater. "And what will you be singing tonight?" Simon asked gently. "Happy New Year." The piano began soft, almost fragile. Angelo closed his eyes. The first note floated out, delicate but steady. It carried grief, yes, but also longing. As he continued, his voice grew stronger, richer, filling the massive theater with unexpected depth. The lyrics about hope and new beginnings felt painfully personal. Behind him, images appeared on the giant screen: green mountains, a small wooden house, a faded family photo with his father smiling proudly. When Angelo reached the chorus, something shifted. His voice soared, clear, powerful, almost defiant. It wasn't just a song anymore. It was a promise. The audience was silent, completely captivated. Simon removed his glasses slowly. His jaw tightened. Angelo sang the line, "May we all have a vision now and then," and tears streamed down his face. But he didn't wipe them away. He sang through them. For his father. For his mother. For every empty chair at every New Year's table. The final note rang out, pure and unwavering. Silence. A deep, overwhelming silence. Then the entire audience rose to their feet. The applause thundered across the theater. Heidi was crying openly. Sophia covered her mouth in shock. Howie shook his head, whispering, "Incredible." Simon took a long breath before speaking. His voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Angelo. I've seen thousands of auditions. But that was one of the most sincere performances I've ever witnessed." He paused, blinking quickly. "You didn't just sing a song. You shared your heart." Angelo stood there, shaking slightly. Simon continued, "Your father would be so proud." The audience erupted again. Then Simon did something rare. He stood up slowly, walked over to the golden buzzer, and pressed it. Gold confetti exploded into the air, raining down like stars over Angelo's small frame. He gasped, covering his face as tears fell freely. His mother ran onto the stage, hugging him tightly as they both cried beneath the golden shower. Back in his mountain village, neighbors gathered around a small borrowed television powered by a generator. When the golden buzzer rang, cheers echoed through the hills. Firecrackers popped early. For the first time since his father's passing, New Year's felt alive again. Angelo's journey didn't just change his life. Donations helped rebuild homes. Scholarships were offered. Clean water systems were installed in his village. The mountains that once heard only his quiet voice now carried stories of hope. On the next New Year's Eve, Angelo stood on a newly built community stage overlooking the hills. The village gathered together, smiling, hopeful. As midnight approached, Angelo looked up at the stars. "This is for you, Papa," he whispered. And he sang. But this time, his voice wasn't alone. The entire village joined him. The mountains echoed back their song. Because being poor does not mean being powerless. Because loss does not silence a dream. And because sometimes, one brave voice is enough to turn sorrow into celebration. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys. No matter how hard your year has been, keep singing. The world might be waiting to hear you.